Hello and welcome to episode 41 of the Boxing Social Podcast in association with Betfred. With me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. Before we get started, as always, just like to remind everybody to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn those notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, I am delighted to be joined by Sky Sports' Adam Smith. Adam, been a while since I've caught up with you. I think I've spoke to you once at the Eubank Williams press conference, the original Eubank Williams press conference. But yeah, it's been a bit of time. We used to catch up all the time, and it's been too long.
Rob, I'm around. Just give me a call. I'm always available. It's been a busy time, a very busy last 6 months, particularly as everything's changed, obviously, in the boxing landscape, and particularly for us at Sky. We've got our mojo back. We're in a really good place as we enter 2022, and it's really exciting. But there's been a huge amount that's gone on behind the scenes, I guess, since sort of last springtime when Eddie decided to go to DAZN, and it was a huge transformation for us. I mean, I've worked with Eddie and Frank and the team at Matchroom for so long that it felt like a bit of a divorce, a friendly divorce, but it felt like it was really weird for a number of weeks. But out went Eddie for us and over to DAZN and competition, which is always exciting, as well as Frank at BT. And then not only did we decide to go again, but go again even sort of harder with two big deals. Top Rank's 4-year deal gives us some big global names and plenty of action from overseas. And then Ben Shalom was given the keys for 4 years at Sky on the UK shows. And that was really exciting for me because I didn't know Ben. I'd heard of him. I knew of him. I'd spoken to him on a couple of occasions, but I didn't know him to work with. And that's just been really, really exciting and enjoyable and fun and different. And he's got so much energy, and he's different to Eddie. Eddie's got huge amounts of strengths, and so does Ben, and they've got different strengths in many ways. Ben's alongside John Wischusen, which I think is a great thing for him as well, because John is so wise and has seen so much in boxing. And he's got us at Sky to help him. And we've been working pretty much night and day for the last 6 months to build together Boxer and Sky's future. And it's a long journey. It's not something that we thought would happen immediately. Obviously, Eddie and the Matchroom fighters went, so we had to sort of start from scratch and a bit of a blank canvas. But, the business have got behind us. We've had to be smart and strategic and, find fighters where we can and, take a sort of punt on some of the younger ones and build up a big women's stable as well as a men's stable. So I think we've done really well in 6 months. But it's difficult. We've got budgets. We've got there's a lot of other promoters out there, a lot of other fighters that we can't get hold of and just bring to Sky. So it's got its difficulties. But listen, we're in an excellent position now. We've got a really good mixture in our stable. And we're ready to go for a fantastic February. I think it's the best February I can remember in many years on Sky, with Eubank Williams and Khan-Brook and then Josh Taylor and Jack Cattrall to finish us off. So 3 phenomenal events, 2 on Sky Sports, 1 on Sky Sports Box Office, and real value for the customers, and a great time to be delivering where we've got to in 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very much welcome February as well. As somebody who has a boxing news outlet and there's been no shows in January, we welcome the busy February that Sky and Boxer are bringing to us. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't want to spend too much time looking back because, as you mentioned there, you've got an exciting future ahead with Sky Sports Boxing. But just going back to the kind of uncoupling, should we call it, between Sky Sports Boxing and Matchroom Boxing. We briefly spoke before we came on air about the fact that, we've been around with Sky. I think you started to work for Sky in the mid-90s. So you've been around the block, Adam. You've been around the block in your time and obviously seen many people come and go and changes to the landscape. How difficult was that initial kind of phase? Of course, it brings with it its own exciting opportunities, but I'd imagine that was certainly a difficult pill to swallow initially.
Very unsettling, I think, for everybody on the boxing team at Sky, because people didn't quite know what was happening. And I think, Eddie didn't make the decision until he did, and there was a lot of talk about it, and talks, and change is unsettling. So, and a lot of the boxing team at Sky have been there and they're very passionate and very diligent and very, you know, loyal to it. And I think that it was a tricky time. But as you said, I've seen other tricky times at Sky. You know, we had the Eubank World Tour when I began, and then Frank Warren came in with his huge stable, and we had Frank Warren shows, and then we had this deal with Panos and Frank Maloney, and then Mick Hennessy, and then Ricky Hatton, and others. And Matchroom seemed to always have had some sort of deal. And then when Frank decided to start Box Nation up, Barney Francis decided to go with just Eddie Hearn as the sort of UK promoter, and that was different. And Eddie really was pretty unknown. Okay, he had a famous dad, but he you know, been in poker, he'd been in golf, he was a massive boxing fan. But I remember at the beginning he had a few fighters. I mean, rather like Ben, and you know, before too long he got going, and the arena shows and everything built and snowballed. And I think we had a wonderful relationship and partnership, and it was fantastic fun. And we both worked really hard. And Eddie's 24/7, and it was we were all in, and I think that we saw the sport grow, not just obviously Matchroom and Sky. There were many others as well, many other parts of that, but London 2012 helped, and it gave us Anthony Joshua and Katie Taylor, and then Katie was a big moment for Sky and Eddie. And I think it was fantastic. And I think obviously when DAZN came in and he partnered with them in America, it did change, because some fighters then went over to the States, and maybe we would have had them on UK time. I remember Callum Smith going into the Super Series, and that was tough for us because that was on ITV, and Callum was our sort of Saturday Fight Night fighter. And so there was some, you know, some trickier times, but still we had big nights, especially with Anthony Joshua. And yeah, look, I look back at our time with Matchroom with incredible fondness, and not just, you know, Eddie, but Frank Smith and the entire team at Matchroom were brilliant to work with. And, you know, that's why I think it was so difficult. You know, and then I suppose in the last year we'd had the bubble life, which almost in a way got you even closer to them, because you know, Andy Scott and I were in there the whole time, and you know, you were mixing with all the guys and girls from Matchroom, and it was hard. But this is business. Eddie made a decision to go to DAZN, and you know, he's going to have a real crack at that, and he's taken his stable, and you know, we wish him well. And as I've said before, that competition's great in boxing. You know, we've been the ones that have stayed with it, but we've had BBC originally, we've had Setanta, we've had RTV Digital, we've had all sorts sort of come and go. And if DAZN are here to stay, then they're going to be big competition for us. And let's see what happens with the BT deal and various other things that are floating around. But obviously they're hugely ambitious, aggressive, and competitive in the market. But you know, it's a streaming service, and Sky have got a huge platform, and we know what we've got, and we have the Premier League football, and we have the Formula One, and the cricket, and the golf, and all the sports, plus also, you know, your Sky Mobiles, now your Sky Glass. I mean, it's a massive business, and I think what we were probably worried about was how aggressively we go again, and how much boxing we'd have on. But as I said, we've been loyal to it for 30 years, so we were never going to go away. It's just sort of how we did it. And then to have these two deals with Top Rank and Ben and Boxer, they sort of dovetail each other nicely. Obviously, they're working together for Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall, and I'm sure there'll be more times like that. Ben's also working with Wasserman on Chris Eubank, and Dimitri Salita on Clarissa Shields. So he's already, you know, branching out. He's planned this for a long time, Ben. That's what impressed me so much, is that people were saying, who's Ben Shalom? You know, who is this guy? And actually, you know, they work behind the scenes, a bit like Ben and I are doing now. They work behind the scenes for a long time on this, to get ready, to get prepared. So it didn't come to them as a big surprise that they got this. It came to everybody else as a big surprise. But I think they were ahead of the curve. He understands boxing. He knows it. He's very bright. He's entrepreneurial. He's a great guy. Even if he does call me at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night and wakes the house up. But, you know, my wife's like, I mean, why don't you just come and live with us? But, you know, that's boxing, as you know, Rob. And it's great. And I guess it's making me feel young again. And it's been hard work, really hard work. But it's good fun, and it's a challenge, and hopefully it's a challenge that we're going to succeed in, and we're very positive. we obviously we're not saying it's all on Sky or whatever. We've had a big change, a big shift, but we're still very much in it, and I think we've got a phenomenal schedule coming up, and we're going to take it slowly, and hopefully in the next year or two you'll see how powerful a platform Sky really is.
Now, one of the things that you've just said there, I actually wanted to touch upon with you is the fact that, we've mentioned the fact you've worked at Sky for now, you're in your 2, 3, 4th decade. Makes it sound really a long time when you say that. 90s, noughties, 10s, 20s. How have you managed to you're a family man, you have children. How have you managed to manage that, I guess, from the mid-90s? Obviously being a roaming reporter and out there and covering, we mentioned there, about going to Puerto Rico and traveling here. And obviously your role, kind of COVID aside, still requires an awful lot of traveling, but it's not necessarily the traveling. It's the Ben Shalom call at 11:30 or getting stuff from America, because Americans still haven't worked out the time difference, but that's another argument for another day. How have you managed to manage that, really? What I always say to people is that you have to really love boxing, and just from speaking to you for 5 minutes the first time I ever met you, you can tell that really does come across from speaking to you.
I'm passionate about what I do, Rob. I'm all in. I'm that sort of a person. If I'm spending time with the kids, and and I say, look, I got to put that on hold, and I can't talk to Ben, and I can't talk to that, and you just sort of concentrate and get involved with that. But the thing about boxing is it's utterly gripping, it's addictive, it's 24/7, and you can't really switch off your phones. I remember John Wish telling me a long time ago, pretty much everything can wait until tomorrow, at 5, 6 o'clock, if you put your phones down and go and have your family meal, and then it will be all right, and in the morning you can deal with it. But it's changed, everything's changed, social media, everything changed. And I think I still love it. I still love it every day. It is difficult balancing family life with that. I'm also a mad sports fan generally, so I like to keep up with the football, the tennis, the cricket, the golf, the darts, you name it. So that's hard. 2 of my kids are big sports fans. The other one just, I think, wants to be famous in dancing, TikTok, whatever. But my 2 oldest ones are big football fans, and so I can watch stuff with them. But as far as the boxing goes, and it was, I've always loved boxing since I was a kid. I looked up to Tommy Hearns, was my hero, Barry McGuigan. I got to the McGuigan-Pedrosa fight at Loftus Road, and so I was really hooked from an early age. I love Chris Eubank, and then I went to work with Evander Holyfield when I was quite young out of university. So there was quite a pull with boxing, but I also equally love tennis, and I'm a massive tennis fan. I equally love football. So for me, it was just being in sport. And I think boxing just pulls you in, and there you get the chance to meet the most incredible of athletes, of fighters, of gladiators, and the stories are just compelling. And I think as well, there's the difficult moments you have to deal with. I've had to come through the death of James Murray, the terrible injury to my friend Spencer Oliver, and how he's recovered, and Paul Ingle's situation, and others. So there's the very difficult ones you have to deal with, as well as the incredible highs like Naz Kelly's, and your Fury beating Klitschko, or AJ beating Klitschko, or whatever, and all these incredible nights, and the Morales Barrera trilogies, and Gatti Wards, and Oscar De La Hoya, and the women fans, and Katie Taylor, the icon of Ireland. I mean, there's so many unbelievable moments, and I always say we can't do it without the fighters. The fighters are everything. I'm in awe of the fighters, whether they're 4-round, 6-round journeymen, whether they're British champions, European world elite, whether you're Floyd Mayweather's, it doesn't matter. Everyone that gets into that ring is a lot braver than I am, and I think I've always had that ultimate respect for them, and I think I always feel that still. So I think maybe that's why I still love it as much as I do. I'm as excited about being ringside for Eubank and Williams, for Khan-Brook, for Taylor and Catterall, and for the undercards as I ever have been, I think. So yeah, I guess I'm lucky to have been given the chance by Sky. I work really hard, Rob, as you know, and but I love it. And every bit of help I tried to give Eddie and Sky, I try now to give Ben and Sky, and that's my job. I'm trying to get the best boxing on Sky. We can't have everything. I've always said the sweets in the jar, you can't have them all. But I try very hard to get the best we can have and to keep our customers as happy as possible, both with the fights we give and the build-up and the build-up shows and the great content team that we have and the promotional team, the Sky Sports News group. Everybody, pushes it into making it entertainment and a great event. But without the fighters, we'd be nothing.
Something just popped into my head there when you just mentioned that, so I'm going to ask it now. Probably it's my own detriment, by the way. Can you bring Ringside back? Because everybody asks me about that. You must have an umpteen amount of requests, tweets, emails. Ringside was brilliant, Adam. Can we get Ringside back on Sky? I mean, it'd probably mean that people stop watching my podcast, but that's fine. If we could get Ringside back, I'm willing to sacrifice the Boxing Social podcast for the greater good.
I loved Ringside. It was just a show that worked, and it was a show that just we were so excited about every Thursday. It was fantastic. I was lucky enough to work it with one of my best friends in the world in Johnny Nelson. We go back a long way. I spent time with him before he even became a world champion, and I sort of singled him out as somebody I thought who could come to the TV side because he'd been through everything. He'd been through the failures, the success, the exile, and all of that, and ended up being an incredible world cruiserweight champion with 13 defences and undefeated in 7.5 years. And then I told him to pack it up because I thought Enzo Macronelli would knock him out. But well, his legs are gone by then. But Johnny was brilliant, and I think that what Johnny did was he brought the fighters in and he made them feel comfortable because he related to them, whether they were great fighters, good fighters, medium fighters, or just ones, even the white collar ones, or sort of amateurs. And I think Johnny brought that real sort of warmth to Ringside. We got some brilliant guests. We were lucky.
Some real iconic moments.
Yeah. Boxers are brilliant because I've worked in football and on Sports Centre and news and stuff, and I love football. But getting to footballers is difficult. Getting to boxers is much easier. The access is great. They want to tell us their tales, and we had everybody in there from Sugar Ray Leonard to Marco Antonio Barrera to Klitschko to Tyson to Lewis to
Larry Holmes.
Larry Holmes came on, did a great special. Nigel Benn, Eubank, Calzaghe. We got them to sign a big cloth actually, which has got everything on, and it was brilliant. And you got to remember that sort of Froch Groves and even Khan-Brook and Groves to Gale and all those moments. Fury and Hay and just, fantastic stuff. And people sitting in different rooms and not coming to studio. And then I remember a spider coming across the set once and all sorts. And and a terrible moment when we'd heard Emmanuel Stewart had died and things like that you remember. And we had it for a number of years, a number of seasons, and then it started to feel as though, everything was happening in digital and social, and suddenly we'd record something or we'd do it live, and we liked doing it live because it was up to date. But then by, if we put it out at 6 or 7 o'clock, then by 9 o'clock it would have changed, or certainly by the morning things would have all changed, and the show became a bit outdated because of that. So I think that was a problem, and I think that's why we decided to go into these sort of shorter, sharper chunks on digital. But I miss it. Johnny misses it, and he always says to me, you should always leave a party at its highest and never wait too long. And I think that's probably what we did with Ringside. We left it for people to always remember, and we get a lot of people writing in or calling saying we'd love it back, and maybe something similar can be revived. But I think Ringside was Ringside at that era, and I think that the world's moved on a bit since then. But it was a special show.
Any in particular moments? You mentioned all of those great guests and those great times. Any in particular standout moments for you, stuff that you really will remember?
Marco Antonio Barrera coming in was brilliant. I remember when Lomachenko came around Sky, and I just couldn't believe he was in Sky, and people didn't know who he was, and I was thinking, this is ridiculous. And then Tyson stopped traffic, and there was so many different moments. I don't know. I remember, I think we did 5 or 6 seasons of it, and Johnny probably missed a few because he had an injury at one point, and he was holed up at home, and I think we did some stuff with him at home, and I ended up doing hosting by myself a few times. But I don't think, Rob, in all that time I missed a show, But I remember one particularly, I was really ill and I didn't know how I was going to get through it. So I was almost like in pain for the entire hour. But because it was just talking boxing and, Ed was doing his reports and, we had some great chat. I can't remember if it was in the studio, maybe Ricky or Jamie Moore or someone. And it was just, and you just felt you were with friends. You felt you were with, I don't know, I loved it. Even when I was in pain, I loved it. So no, it was just a great feeling. And it wasn't just me, it was the team behind us, Charles Lawrence who produced it, James Tynan who produced it, those guys, Declan Johnson, those guys who were involved in all of that era. They loved it like we did. And it was just, I think when you're passionate about something and you work hard, I think that you're just very lucky. And we're very lucky to be given a show like that. And, we never sat on our laurels. We always wanted to do it better week by week. And I think Chris Eubank's one was funny as well. I mean, loads. Remember Conor Benn when he was about 15 in the ring and Nigel going, "Here's my son's going to do this." And he is.
Right, before we move on and talk about what's coming up in the packed Sky Sports boxing schedule, one thing that I've thought might be quite interesting for people to look and have you break down is you would have got it all the time. People, it's kind of the double-edged sword of social media nowadays. We're more informed than ever before, but obviously there's a lot of misinformation out there and people can kind of grab the wrong end of the stick, so to speak. Making a fight from the perspective of a broadcaster, so to speak. Explain to people the process of making a fight. I know it's a very general kind of sweeping statement, but as I say, I feel like some people were watching, well, just do this. Well, you've had it before. You've had it in interviews with me. Just do this, do that, do the other. It's not as easy as that.
No.
Break down the process of making a fight. Let's go for, let's say, a normal Saturday fight night and when that becomes a pay-per-view fight, for example.
Yeah, I mean, look, making a fight is very difficult. I think the public see more of that now. The fans see that, especially with the heavyweight situation as it is. And they're just saying, people are saying, what's step aside money and why is he doing that? And what belt is this? And that's the complex, the complexities of boxing and the difficulties that, you want everyone to understand it. And I think that is hard. But I think people are getting, with the fact that AJ Fury wasn't made, and the person on the street might say, "Oh, it's ridiculous, they're ducking each other," but ultimately, I tend to go to the fighters. I tend to want to know if the fighters really want that fight to happen, and you tend to get a good gauge. And I know, for example, that Anthony Joshua wanted to fight Tyson Fury, and Tyson Fury wanted to fight Anthony Joshua, and they still do. But there's so much in the way. And it's not just money and business, but it's different promoters, different managers, different agents, and broadcasters, and everyone's got their own business. Everyone's got their own slight agenda, even if you want to make it all happen. So then it's very special when it is actually made. Mayweather Pacquiao was talked about for years and made 5 years too late. We could have had 3 of them by then, but when it was actually done, it was like that satisfaction that actually two rival broadcasters that sort of work with each other, and Showtime and HBO. Same with Lewis and Tyson, when they had Jimmy Lennon and Michael Buffer, both in the ring, and you suddenly felt that, okay, actually boxing's worked then, that they found a way to do this, they found a way to make this. It is really hard. We're broadcasters, Rob. It's not really our it's not our job, it's not our responsibility to actually make a fight. It's, for me, it's Ben Shalom's responsibility to bring us a fight. But that's black and white. Actually, what happens is we talk and we work out what we think and, how easy it is to do that. And then it's obviously goes back into the business of, could it be a box office fight? Should it be? Is it right? So there's a lot of complications with it. For example, I was adamant that Eubank Williams should not be a box office fight. I didn't think that it was right. I think it's a Sky Sports fight. And you've got to remember that we've had a lot of great Sky Sports fights over the years, as well as box office events. But of course, with someone like Amir Khan and Khan-Brook, which has been on and off talked about for years, that there's an extra sparkle, there's an extra special feel to that fight. So therefore, that is a box office fight. So that's a difficult one, the Sky Sports and box office. But also just a smaller fight, even a British title fight, sort of the massifications, the making of that it's tricky. And, some fighters are up for anything, some aren't. Some want to carefully, manipulate their careers. Some want to fight anyone. Some just don't care. And then, of course, you've got your managers who want certain ways, and your promoters who might be thinking something else. So there's a lot of people to feed in. And then the broadcasters, I remember Frank Warren going, God, you think you can do it? Then you take out your matchmaker's license. And Frank was brilliant at matching fighters. But then there comes to a point where broadcasters are saying, hang on, is this good enough? Or is this, do we want more here? Well, then they'll say, well, pay more. And we'll say, hang on a minute, we're paying you this and you should give us that. So it's always difficult. I think the best thing I can say, it's about communication. Some of the hardest fights to make involved Adam Booth, who I'm very fond of. Adam had a way of absolutely getting what he wanted for his fighter. George Groves and James DeGale springs to mind. So too David Hay and Vladimir Klitschko. And I remember having Adam on one phone and Frank Warren on another, literally like this. And it was almost like, you tell him and you tell, and I was sort of in the middle. And you sort of try and smooth it a bit, I guess. That's probably what my role's been. And my role as sort of head of boxing development is to almost smooth the waters between the promoters and Sky in many ways. I work for Sky. I'm a Sky man through and through, cut me in half, and I bleed Sky, of course. But at the same time, I've got so close to the boxing world that I understand where the promoters are coming from too. And, so many people thought I got very close to Eddie, which I did, and I thought that was important. And I'm very close to Ben now because I can see the problems they're having. And I know they've got agendas and we've got our business. And there has to be a time where you say, no, you can't do that. It's not right for Scar. It's not right for the customer. But often I think I'm that person that sort of tries to pull people together and things together to try and make it work. I'm not a big financial, commercial, legal man at all. There's many people better at Sky than me on the operational, legal, and all that sort of side. But what I do know is I've got experience in the sport. I've got experience with people. I love people. I like working with different groups, and even the rival promoters, whether it's Eddie or Frank or whatever, I think it's always important to have a good relationship with people and to, you don't know where it's going. Things can change very quickly in this sport. So I think the key is communication. I think I've worked particularly on one Christmas Eve, Christmas Day with Adam Booth and Bernd Bonte, who weren't seeing eye to eye on Klitschko Hay very much at all. And, that was tricky, but you learn a great deal from it. And then the next time something like that happens, you think, okay, if you just do that. And when Khan-Brook was being made, so there was times obviously over the years where Eddie nearly made it, Frank nearly made it. There was one moment I thought at Bramall Lane, actually, Kel was doing a press conference and I had Shah on the phone and I thought, we're going to make this fight now. And then he said, I've got some news for you. Amir's going to go and fight Canelo. I'm thinking, no, please, we're never going to get this fight done. But I think then they reached out and said, look, we're ready to do this fight. And there was so much, obviously, for Ben to work through and difficulties with the weight and the money and all the rest of it. And often that's not my responsibility. That's where I say, look, hand it to the lawyers, etc. But the fact is, I know Amir, I know Kel, and if I can just help out, sort of just smoothing it a bit or just sort of, making it chug along, then I will. But it's not the broadcaster's responsibility to make the fight, but obviously we're heavily involved and we definitely want the best we can have on Sky. We can't have everything, as I've said, but we want the best we can deliver. And it's important that there is that quality control and that we deliver what we can for our customers alongside our huge breadth of sport and all the channels. Boxing is very much part of it.
You mentioned Khan-Brook. We've mentioned it a few times in this interview. We've waited for, it must be a decade, if not a decade thereabouts, for that fight to be made. What was it about this time around, should we say, that got it over the line? What's different now compared to the umpteen amount of other times that you would have tried to make the fight?
I think they both needed each other. I think that's the truth of it. I think they both needed each other now. They'd had those defeats to Terence Crawford. And I think that no one really wanted them to retire without fighting each other. But at the same time, we never had Hatton Witter, we never had Lewis and Bowe, we never had Calzaghe and Froch. There's loads of fights that didn't happen for whatever reason, and you're left thinking, like we did with our fantasy fights, who could beat who. It was always important for me. I've known Kel since he was a 10-year-old kid in Winkerbank. I remember him walking and his hands through the up to Brendan on on the Winkerbank floor in the St Thomas gym. And so I've known Kel his life really, and Amir since he was a precocious teenager, and going to Athens, and you get close to these guys, and of course you have to have a distance. We're broadcasters, they're fighters, but you get very close to them and their families. And I've always known that they both wanted the fight. Maybe Kel's chased it harder. Maybe it's been more personal to Kel because he's probably got more jealousy of what Amir's done. But I think they both really did want the fight. Amir's probably been protected and been taken another way, and he's gone to America, etc., and done very well. And Kel's done well with his opportunities, of course, both former world champions. But I think the time was right for this fight. It felt like it was now. You've got to remember that Froch and Groves obviously fought towards the end of Carl's career. It was the second fight was his last fight. Yes, he could have fought on, he could have fought Chavez. There was talk of it, but he went out on a high. And I've always thought that Khan-Brook would come together and maybe listen. We want this to be a fantastic fight. It's all about February the 19th now. Who's going to win? No one knows who's going to win. No one's ever known who's going to win. And now probably even more so. I'm not even sure the fighters know deep down. They say they do, but ultimately we don't. If we get a humdinger of a fight, we could maybe do it again, and they could have that sort of that nice story, that nice narrative to go through 2022, or maybe we'll get a definitive winner on February the 19th. It felt the right time to have it. And then I thought, we're going to get a lot of people saying, it's too late, it's they're past their best, etc. And of course we had a bit of that at the beginning, but I think now people are really fascinated with this fight. I think they've seen that they've gone off to training camp. I've spoken to both of them regularly. They are in the shape. We always hear it from fighters in the shape of their lives, but I think they really are. I think they know they cannot afford to lose this fight, Rob. I think, the Sunday morning comes, February the 20th, and the loser's going to have to live with that forever because that's the fight that you're going to be linked with. Never mind all the Devon Alexander, the great performances, the Maidanas, all that sort of stuff that Amir's had, or Kel going over to beat Sean Porter in America. I mean, forget all that. It's going to be about Khan-Brook. They're almost, the names just sort of run off. It's like Froch Groves, and they're doing these tours now, Froch and Groves together. You've got to think back, actually, who else did Carl beat in his career? Do you know what I mean? And for George, he lost both fights, but that made him. And yes, he went on to win a world title, but that's synonymous. Barrera will always be mentioned with Morales, Corrales and Castillo, Gatti and Ward, Holyfield and Bowe. They're linked together forever in history. And I think Khan and Brooks, the anticipation has been so much that now we're finally going to get it. It's really, really exciting. I just hope that there's, they get to the ring and everything goes right and we just get a really good fight. And I think they're not the fighters they were at their outer peaks. Of course they're not, but they're still former world champions who are very, very good. And it's just got everything. It's got huge personal pride, grudge. This is a jewel you want to see. And I think it was made because, I got a call independently to me saying, look, I think the time's now. I think we've got this fight, together. I took it to Ben, and, Ben was the one that sort of worked night and day to make it happen and get the right lawyers on it and make sure that the two sides were sort of kept apart, really, and the negotiations were dealt with like that. And then it came together and boom, it went out. I think it was important for the fighters that they were on Sky. I mean, Amir said that they were offered more money elsewhere. I think Eddie did, but I think they wanted to be on Sky. I think this fight is right for Sky, and I'm so excited it's actually happening.
So am I. We had the podcast the other day where we did our kind of 2022. I'm Khan-Brook. Well, you can have a Khan and Brook side of the scarf, and I'm fully invested in Khan-Brook. I can't wait for it. It's a fight I've longed to see for a long time. Is it a world level fight now?
It's a good question. I think it's, in many ways, and this is going to sound weird, in many ways it's bigger than a world title, but it's much smaller as well. So I don't know if it is. They both lost to Terence Crawford, who is, arguably the best or one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport. So it doesn't mean they're not world level. They've won world titles. I think they've been world level for a long time. Whether they are still good enough, the pair of them, to become world champions again is questionable. I mean, one definitive performance from either, and yes, maybe we'll get another world title opportunity. I don't think this fight is about that. I don't think this fight is about it being a British level fight or a world level fight. I think this is about two extremely talented and respected British fighters of the last 20 years getting it on in a match that has been waited for too long, and now it's finally happening. And I think that what's brilliant about it is the unpredictability of what is going to happen in the ring. You could see a scenario where Amir goes out and his hands are just too quick for Kell and he can't cope. You could see a scenario where Kell lands a right hand on him early and Khan can't cope. You see a scenario where Khan's hands are quicker than his feet, that Kell's timing is not quite right, that both hit the canvas. Who wants it more? The orbital problems to Kell going to reappear. Is Khan's chin going to be a problem? Or are we going to get a fantastic 12-round fight? I think what it is, it's a level playing field. Whether that level is world, just under, whatever, I don't think it really matters. It certainly doesn't matter that it's not for a world title. It's Khan-Brook, Brook-Khan, Khan-Brook. Who's going to win? Khan. Who's going to win? Brook. It's like Froch and Groves. People say now, what belt? Oh, it was for the world super middleweight titles, but what belts? People aren't going to remember. It was Froch or Groves. Now it's Khan and Brook. And I tell you what, people are split down the middle.
I completely agree. I say to people, all 5 are in play, which means knockout or decision either way, or the draw. Like none of those outcomes would surprise
Or some
me.
controversy. I mean, you just can't. You can't write what's going to happen. There's times I wake up and I think, Amir just has too much skill-wise and speed for Kell. And then I wake up and think, Kell is a really solid, brilliant fighter at his best, and his timing is fantastic. And Shane Mosley and Vernon Forrest, I remember that fight. Everyone thought Shane Mosley was going to win, and I went to interview Vernon, and he said, jab beats speed, and it did. You know, can Kell's jab get going? And it's a really fascinating one. I think it's personally more important to Kell, this fight. I think he's waited for it. He's hunted Khan down so much. I think for Amir, it was for a long time just another fight, but now he realizes how important this is. And I think that that's why he's got himself into shape. David Hay was telling me he was in shape a long time before even the announcement for this. I think he knows that he cannot afford to lose this, or that, you know, that legacy will be affected, badly affected. And Kell, you know, Kell spent Christmas and New Year in Fuerteventura cycling up hills, 90-mile bike rides, you know, no Christmas pudding or excess for Kell. And, you know, we know that he's had a tendency to do that a la Ricky Hatton in the past, but he's just, they both are sounding fantastic mentally and physically in just the best possible condition they could be. And rightfully so, because this is a fight of the ages, and I really think it's going to reach fever pitch by the 18th of February, by that Friday night, by the weigh-in. I just think it's going to be an incredible week, and I just hope that, you know, everybody gets to see it, because it's not all the time that these fights are made, and
No.
we've got to enjoy it.
No, I completely agree. You mentioned there about the weigh-in, just kind of picturing it there, weigh-in, everything happening. What you'll definitely get this as well. What I'm looking for, that 15 seconds after the referee gives them the announcement, gives them the instructions, and they go back to the ring, and it's going to be, I mean, you'll be there, you'll be ringside commentating, I'll be there, and it'll be like, oh shit, we're here now. Khan-Brook, that 15 seconds.
Often that's my most favourite time.
I always say to people, if you could bottle that 15 seconds of anticipation and sell it.
People say to me, the 100 metres Olympic final, just before that, just that few seconds where they're getting down into their positions. And I think that with boxing, I think that's how lucky we are to be ringside and to feel that and see that. And I used to say to the team, when I was running the content side of the team, we had production meetings, and I said, thank you so much for all the work you put in for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. I mean, you could not have done any more. You're on your knees. You couldn't have done any more. Let's just have one more night. This is it. And there's nothing you or I can do when that bell rings. There's nothing. And I think that moment before that first bell rings, you realize that almost like the hype, the work, the build-up is finished. None of it matters. And what matters now is what is delivered by the two fighters who are brave enough to be doing this for us.
Yeah, you really can't beat that little period of time beforehand. Right, we have to get on with things. Of course, a couple of weeks before that night in Manchester, we get to see Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams on Sky Sports, as you mentioned, not on Sky Sports pay-per-view. Kind of like a, I don't want to say crossroads fight, but something like that with Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Williams. An awful lot on the line here. The winner goes on to challenge for a world title. The loser, it's really difficult to see where that path to a world title goes for them.
I think it's a really, really big fight for Chris Eubank Jr. I think, he's told us how good he is. He's shown us glimpses. He's incredibly dedicated. He's obviously very talented too, but he's not reached the heights that I think he hoped he would do. He's 32 now. I think this is an incredibly important year. Obviously, he had a very difficult 2021 with the tragic loss of his brother, who was lovely, and that was a real setback, obviously, to his career and a terrible loss personally for the family. But he's got to concentrate now on what he does in the ring. I think this is the perfect fight at the perfect time. I'm not saying he's going to win it, because I think Liam Williams has a huge chance in this fight. Former world title challenger. He was brilliant against Liam Smith. He's fought Demetrius Andrade. I think he's going to be surrounded by the Cardiff partisan, incredible Welsh crowd. He's got Adam Booth in his corner. Adam, who trains Harlem. It's
used to train Chris, of course.
Yeah, and had time with Chris. There's all of that to add to the pot, and we love that. But I think it is a particularly important night for Chris Eubank Jr. We've got huge hopes for him, obviously, on Sky, and we're really pleased to be working with Wasserman and Boxer and Ben have done a great job to bring us that with Calais and Nisse, and we're really excited to have that. And it's been a difficult start. He didn't have that opponent. Chris then couldn't fight, and then he fought in Newcastle. But we need to see him in a proper big fight, and that's what this is. It's a really good, very, very solid fight. Again, it's slightly underworld level, but it's there. And as you say, the winner will fight for a world title. But if it's a absolute cracker, no reason why you can't do it again. I think these two are going to give us a thunderous fight. I really do. I think it's going to be brilliant. I think it's going to really test Chris, and if he can come through it, then there's big fights out there for him. But he didn't get through Billy Joe Saunders. He didn't get through George Groves, and he'll have his reasons for that. So I think he's still got something to prove, Chris. I think it's all there for him. I think he's got that ability. I think he's got the minerals. I think he's skillful enough. I think he's tough enough. I like the relationship with Roy Jones. But he's still got to prove it against the very top fighters, and Liam Williams is one of them.
You mentioned the relationship with him and Roy Jones. Obviously, Roy, one of the greatest fighters of all time,
Definitely.
Any weight class. One of the things that we discussed on kind of our big 22 preview podcast was Chris's performances under Roy Jones. It's not been the Chris Eubank Jr. that we've been accustomed to seeing. Obviously, the level of opposition was something to do with that when he was making his way up and just bombing people out. But even in the fights where Avni Yildirim, for example, that come forward strong, letting his hands go, we haven't really seen that in the last couple of fights from Chris Eubank Jr. Of course, Roy Jones was a unique fighter. Do we need to see kind of the Chris Eubank Jr. of old? Do we need to see maybe a new version of Chris Eubank Jr. from what we've seen recently? How would you like to see him approach the fight if you're got your trainer's cap on in this instance?
Well, I think that he's obviously buoyed by having spent so much time with Roy during the lockdown period, and I think that he keeps telling me that he's learned something almost every time they go into a ring, into a sparring session, onto the pads, whatever. I think that he's learnt a great deal. Take anything away from Ronnie Davis and all the others that have been around him for a long time. I'd like to see Chris mix it up in this fight. I think he needs to use both his skills, his obvious reflexes and speed, but I think he needs to stand there and almost prove a point this time. I think if he can do that and mix it up and outbox Liam Williams at times and outfight him at other times, I think that will really tick a lot of boxes. But that's going to be hard because Liam Williams will be coming at him absolutely ferociously. And in a way, Liam's got no pressure on him. He's got nothing to lose here because, people probably think Chris is going to get through him. And that makes him very, very dangerous because I think he probably feels he's being overlooked. I think that he's the one that's fought, Demetrius again, probably one of the pound for pound best, you've got to say, and what he's done in recent years, and certainly he's been avoided. And listen, no disgrace of what happened in that fight, and he's had
some success.
He had some success, and he had success against Liam Smith, and Liam Smith's a very good fighter too. And you cannot write Liam Williams off in this fight. He sounds great. He delayed it through injury. He's changed trainers to Adam. Adam's a canny trainer, wily fox, and he'll have worked this out. So take nothing for granted in this fight. But if Chris Eubank can put on a magnificent performance, I think it really will tell us so much more about him, and it'll give him the launch pad, Rob, towards those really big fights that we all want to see him in, because we want to see whether he can. He'll never eclipse what his dad did. His dad was a unique fighter, and he's always had that pressure on him. But he's different, Junior, and like Conor's different to Nigel. They're taking their different paths, and it's unfair to judge like that, because Chris was different, and he was an entertainer as well as a hard man and a wonderful fighter. But his son is a very good fighter. Is he a great? We're going to find out. For me, not yet, and I think he's got a lot to prove. But I think he's got the ambition, the tenacity, and the drive, and probably the talent to prove that he can be a world champion. But it'd be interesting finding out.
Certainly will, and it's another fight I'm very much looking forward to. And lastly, for your February schedule, for Sky's February schedule, Josh Taylor, somebody who I know that you've been very, very keen to have on Sky Sports Boxing over the years. Of course, the last time you would have had that was the Regis Prograis fight in the World Boxing Super Series final. Brilliant fight that was. Obviously, then went over and boxed at Appin and Kong Song on BT. I think the Ramirez fight was actually on Fight. So it's been a while since you've had him on Sky, but somebody I know that you're very, very keen to have back on.
I remember the early days of Alex Arthur in Edinburgh. Amazing Alex Arthur, and I was there from his professional debut all the way through, and I remember a young fighter called Josh Taylor who looked up to Alex Arthur from Edinburgh, and him coming through the amateur ranks, and I was really excited when he turned professional. I've been a massive admirer of Josh Taylor through the years. I think he's brilliant. He's a southpaw. We talk a lot about Joe Calzaghe, and Josh obviously at a different weight, and with different opponents and all that, but I think he's probably the best southpaw that's come out of Britain for a long time, and I just wonder where he can go and how far he can go. Can he become this 2-weight world champion and beat the likes of your Spencers and your Crawfords? Could he? It's not impossible. You think, oh my God, going in with those sort of names, but let's look at what he's done. The Regis Prograis win was wonderful, winning the Super Series, but going over and then beating Ramirez in the fashion he did, I was watching it at home in the wee hours and gutted we didn't have it on Sky, and I texted him straight afterwards and I said, that was some performance. We got pretty close when Carl Frampton fought Leo Santa Cruz in Vegas and Josh was over. I think it was his 5th or 6th fight, and we spent a lot of time with him then. So we've had our time, little bits of time with Josh over the years, but one of the things I really wanted was Josh Taylor to be on Sky, and I was absolutely delighted when the Top Rank deal came off and I knew we would have him, and it's been a personal thing for me to try now. I mean, everybody in boxing knows how good Josh Taylor is, and obviously those in Scotland do, but for me it's really important to push him on Sky Sports and push him on Sky as much as possible across the platforms that we've got, so people can get to know him. And we had him in the studio a couple of days ago, and he did a whole load of different things. He's actually really good. He was a pundit for us, an analyst for the AJ Usyk night.
He was there with Chris,
and he's very, very good. He says it as it is, and I think people respect him for that. And he's got a very humble attitude, but he's also got a bit of fire to him, as a Scotsman he is, and the brave heart. And I think the Hydra is going to be unbelievable on that night on February the 26th. I think it's going to be wonderful. I love the Scottish crowds. The boxing's going to be brilliant, because he's in with an unbeaten fighter in Jack Catterall, who's full of ambition and hope and dreams himself, and it's a really good match for the undisputed super lightweight treasure, all the belts, the first man to do that in Britain. I think it's terrific, and yeah, look, it's a wonderful night. It's great to have Josh back on Sky, and I really believe that he can become a huge star. I really admire him, Rob.
You mentioned there we've spoken about Josh becoming undisputed champion, the potential for him doing two weights. You've got those guys up at 147 pounds, arguably the deepest division of the last 10, 15, 20 years in boxing.
It's brilliant.
But he does have to get past Jack Catterall. And Jack Catterall in America, now Josh has become this kind of international star. Don't know who Jack Catterall is.
No.
They look at it like it's a foregone conclusion. I think Josh Taylor is rightfully a sizable favourite in that fight, being the undisputed champion. But none of these big glamour fights happen unless he can get past Jack Catterall on the 26th.
Agreed. And that's why I think February the 5th, the 19th and 26th are all fascinating because of those. You can't guarantee a winner in any of them, and they're brilliant matches. I think probably of all three, Josh is the heaviest favourite, and that's right because he's fought at that level. And he keeps telling Jack that you're not on my level, but he doesn't know that yet because Jack hasn't had that opportunity. He went ringside to cheer Josh on. There's no animosity there. They get on great, which is actually a different thing to the other two grudge matches. And it's really nice to see the respect between the pair. You know, Jack hasn't operated in that class. Yes, he had the wins over O'Hara Davises, but he's not done what Josh has done. It's not saying he can't, and he's got the opportunity now, but he's got to go up to Scotland to do it in the Lion's Den against a man who, in my opinion, is at or approaching the peak of his powers in Josh Taylor. He's got huge confidence, and I don't see many weaknesses in Josh. So I think it's a tough ask for Jack Catterall, but it's one that he'll really go for. Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis are brilliant trainers, and they'll have a game plan, and they'll do everything they can to upset the apple cart. And it would be an upset, and it would be an incredible moment for Jack if he can lift all the titles. But I think, as you said, and as I agree, Josh is a rightful favourite, and I expect him to come through.
Yeah, it's sort of what I've said to people. I think Jack Catterall is the type of fighter who could win a world title, but unfortunately for him, he's now not fighting a belt holder as we know in the division.
Well, look at Luke Campbell, who we've recently seen retire. Luke should have been a world champion, no question. It was a great performance against Vasily Lomachenko. You know, Lomachenko is a genius, and Luke stood with him. He didn't win a lot of rounds, but he was there, and I thought that was a brilliant display from Luke, and he was so unlucky over in America against Jorge Linares, and I don't know, Luke should have been a world champion, and so should Jamie Moore, in my opinion. He didn't get the opportunities, and there's a lot of fighters, unfortunately. Matt Macklin should have been in that decision against Felix Sturm, but I think sometimes it doesn't matter if you're not a world champion. You know, you still have a great career as those fighters proved, and I think Jack Catterall could easily win a world title one day, but maybe not this one. But look, he's got an opportunity. He'll have trained extremely hard for it. Josh Taylor has a little bit of an off night. Jack Catterall can pounce on him. So yeah, we can't wait for that.
Looking forward to it. Right, Adam, I appreciate your time. So before we let you go, one of the things that I wanted to wrap up with discussing is women's boxing. It's been a huge period for women's boxing. These last 2, 3, 4 years, women's boxing has kind of blindsided boxing fans, really. It's come out of the blue. You mentioned Katie Taylor's name earlier. Obviously, she's got that big fight with Amanda Serrano. But on Sky, you've got Caroline Dubois, who's recently signed. I know you personally have been somebody who's really been an advocate for women's boxing. You've really put your might behind that. Just talk to us a little bit, if you can, about the increase in popularity, the surge, really, of popularity in women's boxing in the last 3 or 4 years.
I holiday in Ireland, so I've got to know people that know Katie Taylor and known her for many years, and I followed Katie's career, and I was there at the Excel when she fought Natasha Jonas in the Olympics, and that was my first real insight into how good the females can be. And after that, I mentored Savannah Marshall for 4 years at Sky. She was one of our scholars. So, yeah, that got me hooked. And it was just an amazing moment when Eddie and Barney decided that Katie Taylor was coming into the Matchroom stable and going to turn professional on Sky. And I think, you know, because she's been such an icon and she's such a wonderful person, I think that's been fantastic. And it's just inspired this whole next generation, the likes of Tasha Jonas, of Chantel Cameron, of Savannah, of Terry Harper. I mean, there's so many that have just come through. And now it's just a who's who. You look around, you've got your Ellie Scottneys, your Ebony Bridges, your Rachel Balls. There's just so many of them. And I said early on to Ben, I said, look, this is really important. And I think we've got to, so far, we've got to really great select group together of men and women. You know, you look at the Azim brothers and they're young and hungry. You've got the likes of your Joe Pickfords and your Brad Rays who weren't really picked up before, and we're going to give them an opportunity. You know, sort of the Richard Riakports and Huey Furies are a bit further down the line, but I said to him, look, I really, really want to get great females. It's not just women's boxing, it's boxing, and some of the girls are giving us the better fights than the men. You know, look at what happened with Terry and Tasha and Katie and Tasha, and now Tasha has her world title opportunity.
That's super welter.
Yep, it's going to be a big ask for her, but she's, you know, this is her dream. She's going to be in phenomenal shape. She's going to be absolutely ready for it. You know, if anyone deserves to become a world champion, if there is a bit of luck on the night, you know, I don't think there'd be anyone that would be disappointed. But like when George Groves, you know, won at Bramall Lane, I think if Tasha, she's so popular within the trade, and I think it'd be phenomenal if she can do it. But it's going to be tough for Tash. But you know, she's got the chance. Savannah Marshall is absolutely blazing it, going great guns. And now with Ben and Dimitri's relationship, we've got Clarissa Shields coming over. She's going to have her UK professional debut in Wales. It's going to be phenomenal. She's saying Floyd Mayweather might be coming over as well. Clarissa is a one-off. She's a special lady. Cannot wait to spend time around her. I know Caroline looks up to Clarissa hugely. Caroline Dubois was I was so pleased when we got her off the Olympic squad, and she can start her journey with Sky. We were going to do it in November. She was ill. That happens as well in Cardiff. So not just Eubank Williams, but we've got Clarissa Shields. Savannah will be keeping a close eye on her. We obviously hope to make Clarissa and Savannah this year, which will be a massive statement for us. As you've mentioned, Katie fights Serrano. Phenomenal times for women's boxing. You know, I think like Ebony Jones, Georgia O'Connor, even April Hunter, all of them are dreaming, aren't they? And it's brilliant to see. It really is. And I'm delighted that you know, that the females and the males are all in the pot now, and it doesn't matter. Tasha's fight could steal the show. Katie and Serrano topping a bill in Madison Square Garden. We're going to hopefully do, you know, Savannah and Clarissa in Newcastle. I mean, it'd just be unbelievable. And I think that it's about time people have woken up to this. And I'm particularly proud of Savannah, because I've seen her, you know, since she froze at the Olympics, and her confidence just went, and she just couldn't get wins, or she was going to tournaments and getting beaten in the first round, or she was winning them because she knew she had the talent. But, you know, that whole sort of change. Peter Fury's done an amazing job with her, and to see her really fulfill her potential now, and see what she did in Newcastle in front of thousands of fans, and see where she was when we were working with her sort of a long time ago. It's just amazing. She was going to jack it all in and become a teacher, and she stuck with it, and I'm so proud of fighters that do that. Look at what Tyson Fury's done to come back. I remember when he was 20-something stone in Monaco, he was like, I'm going to be world champion. I didn't think he'd get back in a ring, Rob. Look what he's done. I just think those stories are something special, and that's what this sport brings. And now the women are getting the chance to do it as well as the men. It's absolutely brilliant, and it will go on and on from here.
Final one on women's boxing. You've mentioned those fights there. Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. Not only a great fight in the ring, but you've got two completely contrasted stars. I'm really looking forward to Savannah's very, very dry, funny, very dry humour that she's got. And obviously you've got Clarissa, who's a braggadocious character, larger than life. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
The growth of women's boxing, what does it need to do to continue that? Not even to continue that, but to have an even steeper incline. I've always said, in my personal opinion, what boxing hasn't quite had yet is the Ronda Rousey effect of the UFC. Somebody who looks $1 million, maybe, but also is an absolute savage, knocking people out left, right, and centre, quickest knockouts in 30 seconds. Do we need to see that? Is it potentially, do we need the 3-minute rounds? Do we need the smaller gloves? What's going to take women's boxing on an even steeper trajectory in 2022 and onwards?
Great matchmaking, which we've had, which Eddie did, which Ben's doing, which they're doing in the States. They're fighting each other. That's really important. I think that, you know, sometimes you can't get the men to fight each other. The heavyweights is a prime example in recent times. We get great fights, but are we getting absolutely every one that the fans want? But if you ask the fans, do they want to see Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano, Savannah Marshall against Clarissa Shields, you know, or Tasha Jonas, Terry Harper? They want that because they're the best fighting the best. So in many ways, it's slightly easier to make the matches, which I think is really important. I think it will just keep going from strength to strength. If you see, Taylor and Serrano's topping a bill at the Garden, or you see, Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields, as a big Sky fight, as a lead, box office fight, as a sort of changing of the guard thing. Katie Taylor has been an icon, but if it can go, she wants it to go to another level. That's what she wants when she goes, and I think it can do. Michaela Myers, one we haven't mentioned, she's going to be helping us out in Cardiff this week coming, and she's a great fighter, and she looks the part too, and she's a different one, and I think you've got lots of different characters there. I think, Chantel Cameron, Terry Harper, Ellie Scottney I'm very fond of. I mean, Georgia O'Connor's a different one. She's a musician. You've got April Hunter, who's crazy, and Savannah's mate, and she's a massive football fan. So you've got all these different characters. Ebony coming in with her, her Western hat on, and I just think that it's going to take off even more. I really do. But I think it's about profile, telling stories, getting the narrative right. And I wonder if Caroline Dubois is the one to come through, because she is so talented. With Shane McGuigan now, I'm really excited about her journey. Remember, you've also got Lauren and Karis as well, who struck medals in Tokyo to turn professional. So you got them coming through as well. I tell you, it's just an electric time. It really is. And you look at the men coming through from Tokyo with Fraser Clark, Team GB with us. Galalia Fai just joined Matchroom and Eddie. Ben Whitaker will turn professional, just joined 258 Management. The future, Rob, is extremely bright, certainly in the UK. And I think globally as well. I think there's some massive matches that Top Rank are going to make. I've seen the PBC roster coming up. I just think it's a really exciting time for boxing. So I'm really pleased that we are back in it in a massive way. We've got, so many fights this year to come. I think it's 18 fights from Top Rank, 14 from Boxer. We've got the tournament shows as well. We're going to have grassroots stuff. DAZN have got shows most week. BT and Frank. I think it's Channel 5. I think it's fantastic for fight fans. And most importantly, and this is probably where we should finish again, for the fighters themselves. We've had the pandemic. They're not earning money. Grassroots, small shows. It's been such a difficult time for fighters. And I think that now is the chance for them to get back in the spotlight, get paid, and get their careers really rolling again, because they're short windows. And we, you, me, and so many people around the business would not be doing this without the fighters. It is them. It is their bravery, their courage. They get in the rings. They put their lives on the line for our entertainment and for their families each and every time. And that is something that when I walked into boxing nearly 30 years ago, I just had an absolute awe for, and it's something that I still do today. And that will never leave me. It's about them, Rob, not us, not the promoters, not the managers, not the trainers. It is about the pure fighters. And I tell you what, we're in a pretty good place.
Very, very well said. I think that's just as good a place as any for us to wrap up episode 41 of the Boxing Social podcast. Adam, thank you so much for making the trip in today. I know you're a very busy man, and thank you very much for coming in to talk about what is going to be, I'm sure, a packed schedule of boxing in February and beyond, both on Sky and elsewhere. So thank you very much for stopping by today, and to you for checking out episode 41 of the Boxing Social podcast. From me, Rob Tebbutt, from him, Adam Smith, thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch up with you soon.